Caitlin Clark was supposed to be the savior of women's basketball. That's what the headline said. That's what the league wanted fans to believe. A generational superstar walks into the WNBA carrying millions of new viewers, sold-out arenas, historic TV ratings, viral highlights, corporate sponsorships, and enough momentum to completely transform the future of the sport forever. But what if the league never truly wanted her success? What if the moment she became bigger than the system itself, the system started turning against her? Because beneath the bright lights, the packed crowds, and the endless media hype, there is another story unfolding behind the scenes. A darker story. One filled with resentment, jealousy, silent hostility, cheap shots, and a level of bitterness that has shocked even longtime basketball fans. This is no longer just about basketball. This is about power, about control, about ego, and about what happens when one player becomes so influential that an entire league begins to revolve around her overnight. Caitlin Clark entered professional basketball with more pressure on her shoulders than almost any rookie in sports history. She wasn't just drafted to play basketball. She was drafted to rescue an entire business model. The WNBA had talent for decades. Great players existed long before Caitlin Clark arrived. Legends sacrificed years of their careers trying to build attention for women's basketball. But despite all of that talent, the league never truly crossed into mainstream sports culture in the way many hoped it would. Ratings remained modest. National attention came and went. Arenas often had empty seats. Most casual sports fans could barely name more than one or two players. Then Caitlin Clark arrived, and suddenly everything changed. Television ratings exploded almost overnight. Ticket prices skyrocketed. Merchandise disappeared from shelves within hours. Celebrities started attending games. Sports networks that once barely mentioned women's basketball suddenly built entire segments around her. And perhaps most importantly, millions of people who had never watched a single WNBA game before suddenly became emotionally invested. That kind of influence is rare. Not just in basketball. In all of sports. But instead of being embraced universally, Caitlin Clark almost immediately became a target. Hard fouls, trash talk, cheap shots, mocking interviews, passive-aggressive comments, veterans openly dismissing her popularity. It became impossible to ignore. Fans started noticing that every nationally televised game involving Clark seemed to come with another controversial moment. Another unnecessary hit. Another player trying to humble the rookie everyone was talking about. And while physical basketball is part of the sport, many people began asking the same uncomfortable question over and over again. Why does it feel like the league's biggest star is being treated like its biggest enemy? Then came the reports that changed everything. According to multiple discussions surrounding overseas interest, European basketball organizations were reportedly prepared to offer Caitlin Clark contracts so massive that they would completely dwarf her WNBA salary. Think about how insane that sounds for a moment. The most talked-about player in women's basketball, the athlete driving historic ratings, the player generating millions in attention and revenue, was earning a rookie-scale salary in America while international organizations were allegedly preparing life-changing offers that could instantly make her one of the highest-paid female basketball players on earth. And suddenly, the conversation shifted from, how can the WNBA grow around Caitlin Clark, to something far more dangerous? What happens if she leaves? That possibility terrified people. Because deep down, everyone understood the truth. The league's current popularity surge is heavily connected to Caitlin Clark's presence. Without her, much of that momentum could disappear just as quickly as it arrived. And that reality created tension nobody wanted to admit publicly. Some veterans appeared frustrated that a rookie was receiving more attention than established champions. Others argued that they had spent years building the league and deserved the spotlight themselves. In many ways, that frustration is understandable. Professional athletes are fiercely competitive. Egos exist in every sport, and watching a newcomer instantly become the face of an entire league cannot be easy. But here's the problem. Sports has never been purely about fairness. It has always been about attention, about marketability, about who captures the imagination of the public. And right now, nobody captures public attention like Caitlin Clark. Not because the media forced it, not because fans were manipulated, but because millions of people genuinely want to watch her play. That's the difference. The market chose her. And that truth appears to bother many people inside the basketball world far more than they are willing to admit. Then things became even uglier. One controversial on-court incident involving an eye poke and visible injuries sparked outrage across social media. But what truly stunned fans wasn't just the play itself. It was the reaction afterward. Instead of empathy, there was mockery. Instead of support, there was laughter. Instead of unity, there was silence. People began questioning why the league seemed incapable of protecting its most valuable star. Imagine if this happened in the NBA. Imagine if the league's biggest ratings driver repeatedly became the center of controversial physical plays while commentators, players, and even organizations stayed silent afterward. The backlash would be immediate. The media would explode. The league office would step in instantly. But with Caitlin Clark, many fans feel the opposite has happened. They feel she has been left alone. And the more isolated she appears, the louder the overseas rumors become. Europe represents something different. More money, less hostility, fresh opportunity, a chance to escape constant scrutiny and resentment. For the first time, people started seriously asking whether the WNBA could actually lose the very player responsible for its modern explosion in popularity. And if that ever happened, the consequences could be catastrophic. Because this moment in women's basketball feels fragile. The attention is real. The hype is real. The growth is real. But star-driven momentum can disappear faster than people realize. If Caitlin Clark walked away tomorrow, would millions of casual viewers continue watching every week? Would television ratings remain historic? Would sold-out arenas continue across the country? Nobody truly knows. That uncertainty is exactly what makes this situation so explosive. At the center of all of it is a young superstar carrying impossible expectations while simultaneously dealing with criticism from veterans, pressure from the media, non-stop public scrutiny, and a level of hostility that many fans believe has gone far beyond normal competition. And here's the scariest part for the league. Caitlin Clark finally has leverage. Real leverage. For years, women's basketball players often had limited options financially. Overseas contracts became necessary because domestic salaries simply couldn't compare. But Caitlin Clark is different. She is not just a basketball player anymore. She is an entertainment phenomenon, a ratings machine, a cultural force, and global organizations understand her value completely. That means if she ever decides she has had enough, there will be people waiting with open arms and blank checks ready. The WNBA now faces a question that could define its future forever. Do you protect the superstar transforming your league? Or do you allow jealousy, resentment, and internal politics to slowly push her away? Because history has shown something again and again in professional sports. Leagues rise and fall around generational icons. Magic Johnson and Larry Bird saved the NBA. Michael Jordan turned basketball into a global empire. Tiger Woods transformed golf ratings permanently. Caitlin Clark may now be standing at that exact same crossroads for women's basketball. And if the people around her fail to recognize that in time, they may lose the single biggest opportunity this sport has ever had. Now we need to talk about the part of this entire situation that should honestly terrify every fan of professional basketball. Because what is happening around Caitlin Clark is no longer just drama, jealousy, or sports controversy. It is becoming something much deeper, much uglier, and potentially much more damaging than anyone inside the league wants to publicly admit. This is about isolation. This is about pressure. And this is about what happens when the most valuable star in an entire sport starts feeling completely alone inside her own league. A professional sports team is supposed to be a sanctuary. No matter how brutal the media becomes, no matter how loud social media gets, no matter how vicious opposing fans or rival players act, an athlete should always be able to walk into their locker room and feel protected. That's the foundation of every championship culture in sports history. Trust, unity, loyalty, brotherhood, or sisterhood against the outside world. But many fans watching this situation unfold have started asking a brutal question. Does Caitlin Clark actually have that support system around her right now? Because from the outside looking in, it increasingly feels like she's fighting this battle almost entirely by herself. Everywhere she goes, the pressure follows. National television cameras follow her every move. Crowds scream at her in hostile arenas. Commentators dissect every facial expression she makes. Social media explodes after every game she plays. And through all of that chaos, the one place that should feel safe, her own basketball environment, often appears filled with tension instead. That's what makes this situation so disturbing to many fans. The issue isn't just physical basketball anymore. It's emotional exhaustion. Imagine being 22 years old and carrying the expectations of an entire sport on your shoulders while simultaneously becoming the center of nonstop criticism from former players, sports commentators, opposing teams, and online debates every single day. Most athletes would crack under that kind of pressure. And yet somehow, Caitlin Clark keeps showing up anyway. But pressure changes people over time. Even the strongest athletes in the world eventually feel it, especially when support starts disappearing. One moment in particular became symbolic of everything fans believe is wrong with the current situation. After a controversial on-court incident left Clark visibly injured, many people expected the basketball community to rally around her. Instead, the aftermath spiraled into another social media controversy filled with mockery, tension, and uncomfortable reactions that shocked viewers across the country. Fans weren't just upset about the play itself. They were disturbed by what happened afterward. Because in sports, players are supposed to protect each other on a human level once the game ends. Competition is one thing. Humiliation is another. And many people felt the line had been crossed. What made everything even worse was the silence afterward. No strong public defense. No major statement. No clear moment where the league collectively said, "Enough." That silence became deafening. And once fans began sensing that the league's brightest star was not being fully protected, the conversation shifted dramatically. People stopped asking whether Caitlin Clark could transform the WNBA. They started asking whether the WNBA deserved Caitlin Clark at all. That's a dangerous question for any league to face. Because once fans emotionally connect with a superstar, they stop viewing the player as just another athlete. They begin seeing them as the reason they watch the sport in the first place. And right now, millions of viewers feel emotionally invested in Caitlin Clark specifically. That reality changes everything. It changes television negotiations. It changes sponsorship deals. It changes ticket sales. It changes the financial future of the entire league. Which is why the rumors surrounding Europe became so explosive. Because Europe is not simply offering more money. Europe represents something psychologically powerful, a fresh start. A place where Caitlin Clark could potentially play basketball without carrying the emotional weight of an entire cultural war every single night. A place where her greatness might simply be celebrated instead of constantly debated. A place where she could focus on basketball instead of surviving controversy after controversy. And the financial side reportedly makes the situation even more serious. The numbers being discussed are enormous, potentially historic. The kind of contracts capable of changing the economics of women's basketball permanently. That creates a terrifying scenario for the WNBA. Because if the league's most important star starts believing she would be happier, safer, more respected, and more financially valued somewhere else, what exactly keeps her here long-term? That is the question nobody inside the league seems prepared to answer honestly. Especially because the evidence keeps piling up. When Caitlin Clark plays, ratings explode. When she appears on national television, networks promote the games aggressively. When she visits opposing arenas, ticket prices surge immediately. Entire franchises have benefited financially from her presence. And yet despite all of that value, there remains this bizarre resistance surrounding her success. Some analysts tried framing her popularity as media favoritism. Others reduced her impact to cultural debates instead of basketball excellence. Certain former players openly questioned her achievements. And the more people attempted to minimize her influence, the larger her influence became. Because the numbers refused to lie. Viewership surged. Revenue surged. Sponsorship interest surged. Public engagement surged. The league suddenly became part of mainstream sports conversations in ways it had struggled to achieve for years. That doesn't erase the legends who came before her. Icons like Lisa Leslie, Sue Bird, Diana Taurasi, Cheryl Swoops, and Lauren Jackson built women's basketball through decades of sacrifice and struggle. Their impact is permanent. But acknowledging history does not mean ignoring present reality. And the present reality is impossible to deny anymore. Caitlin Clark has become the center of the modern women's basketball universe. Not because the league planned it, not because the media forced it, because fans chose it. Millions of people chose to care. Millions chose to watch. Millions chose to invest emotionally in her journey. That kind of organic popularity cannot be manufactured artificially. And here's what makes the situation even more ironic. The very people resisting Caitlin Clark's rise are also benefiting from it financially. New television deals, bigger sponsorship opportunities, increased exposure, higher attendance, more national coverage, better facilities, greater leverage in labor negotiations. The entire ecosystem around women's basketball is growing because public interest exploded. And whether people like it or not, a massive percentage of that explosion traces directly back to Caitlin Clark, which makes the hostility toward her feel self-destructive from the outside looking in. Because history shows that leagues don't collapse all at once. They decline through moments of arrogance. Moments where organizations fail to recognize transformational talent while they still have it. Moments where politics and resentment overpower vision. And that's why this story suddenly feels so much bigger than one rookie season. It feels like a crossroads moment for the future of women's basketball itself. Because if Caitlin Clark eventually decides the pressure, hostility, and emotional exhaustion are no longer worth enduring, she will not leave quietly. She would take millions of viewers with her. She would take media attention with her. She would take cultural momentum with her. And the terrifying part for the league is this. Everyone knows it. That's why the tension keeps growing. That's why emotions keep boiling over. That's why every controversy surrounding her becomes national news within minutes. Because deep down, everyone understands the truth. This is no longer just about a basketball player. This is about the future direction of an entire sport and whether the people in power are smart enough to protect the very star capable of changing it forever. And that is exactly where this story transforms from controversy into something that could permanently redefine the future of women's sports forever. Because leagues do not survive purely on talent alone. They survive on moments, on icons, on emotional connection. And right now, Caitlin Clark is creating all three at a level women's basketball has never experienced before. The scary part is that the league itself almost seems overwhelmed by the size of the phenomenon standing directly in front of it. Think about how quickly everything changed. Just 1 year ago, the WNBA was still fighting for consistent mainstream attention. Sports networks covered the league occasionally, but it rarely dominated national conversation for days at a time. Casual fans might tune into the finals, but regular season games rarely became major cultural events. Then Caitlin Clark arrived, and suddenly the entire atmosphere surrounding women's basketball exploded into something completely different. Games started feeling like playoff events in the middle of the regular season. Celebrities began showing up courtside. Arena ticket prices surged to shocking levels. Television ratings shattered expectations. Social media engagement went nuclear. Everywhere she played, attention followed. And attention is power. That's the part many people still underestimate. In modern sports, the athlete who controls public attention controls the economics of the league itself. That's why television networks care. That's why sponsors care. That's why owners care. Because attention creates money. Attention creates relevance. Attention creates survival. And Caitlin Clark became an attention machine unlike anything women's basketball had seen before. But with massive attention comes something equally powerful: insecurity. Not everyone reacts positively when the spotlight suddenly shifts away from them. For years, veteran stars were the faces of the league. They carried the burden during difficult seasons when viewership struggled and mainstream media barely noticed women's basketball at all. So when a rookie suddenly arrives and becomes the center of everything almost overnight, emotions naturally become complicated. Some players welcome the growth. Others appear deeply uncomfortable with it. And fans noticed immediately. Every hard foul became another viral debate. Every dismissive interview comment spread across social media within minutes. Every controversial moment surrounding Caitlin Clark generated headlines far beyond basketball circles.